Hey Tubies, I am here, and we are going to talk a little bit today about kind of a touchy subject, binding and binding spells. So I'm going to start off, and this is more or less for our viewers who don't know too much about our path, with the Wiccan Rede. The Wiccan Rede is in it harm none, do what you will, and or several variations. And to the most essential point, that means live your life, be happy, do what makes you happy, but try not to harm those in the process of being happy. Because, let's face it, if you have to hurt someone to make yourself happy, you're probably not going to end up that happy. To get to a rough definition of what binding is kind of like when someone uses their magic to bring to a stop or end a certain type of behavior. That's going to be like, it can range. It's not necessarily bad. That could be nail biting, swearing, smoking, just maybe bad behaviors that you don't really want to participate in, because you can bind yourself from doing these behaviors. If you're going to bind, you usually start with yourself, or at least that's my first thought whenever I think of binding. I think of, oh man, I really don't want to bite my nails anymore. There's nothing left on my fingers. I'm going to bind myself from putting my fingers in my mouth. But while that's true, you do have the ability to bind others as well. Like, I know parents that will bind their children of certain behaviors, like bedwetting or biting other kids at daycare, or things that can be considered harmful to that child or others. And I'm not a parent, but generally I would only suggest that you bind your child if it benefits them. I wouldn't necessarily do it like I'm going to bind my kid from screaming because it gets on my nerves. Generally, if you want to bind your kid, do it to help them. You know, generally we don't like too much self-gain when it comes to impinging on the will of others, which we try not to enforce our beliefs or our actions on other people's lives anyway. You can bind the behavior of others as well. Now, this can be considered controversial for several reasons. Like I mentioned, we don't like to impinge on other people's will. That's not really our style, and binding kind of does that. The only time I would suggest binding other people, now, sometimes people will come to you and ask you to do some kind of binding ritual, like if they have an issue with substance abuse and, you know, they've done the 10-step program, the 12-step, some program to help them stop, and they just can't seem to stop. A binding spell may help that, and they may know and come to you with their permission. That's completely fine. Some do it without their permission, like whenever they're bringing harm to themselves, like drinking and driving, or doing something to agitate, you know, an illness. As their loved ones, of course we want to do what we can to stop this behavior. If you are going to bind someone without their permission, which I am not recommending that, I personally don't think that's a good choice. But if you are going to bind someone without their permission, think about it. Think about that as, first of all, how that's going to affect them. Say that you're really good at what you do and your binding spell is just top rate, 100%. You need to think about how binding them is going to affect all aspects of their life and not just the behavior. Like if you're binding someone from smoking cigarettes, you need to think about how that is going to affect their entire life, because getting rid of one vice might promote another. Make sure you think that through. ask the goddess and the god. Usually what I find, before I bind myself, I talk to my deities. I ask them, you know, what they think, or even my phoenix. I talk to them. Because sometimes you are acting as an agent of karma, or you are being used by a higher power to do this said thing. Now, I don't mean to sound like crazy, radical, or what have you, but say you keep having this dream, and in this dream you are, I don't know, binding your mom from smoking. Let's just stick with that example. And you wake up and you're like, oh, that's crazy, mom's gonna smoke forever. But you have this dream every night. And every night the dream gets like more intense and more vivid, and it just doesn't go away, and you wake up and you're having thoughts about it all day. When it won't leave you alone, that's what I personally would consider a sign. So, I mean, most of us watching these videos are associated with pagan practices or Wiccan or what have you. So you should be able to feel around a little bit. If the goddess is putting it in your face and saying, hey, look at me, bind them for me, bind them, do it for me, then go ahead. But if you're not having strong feelings like that, think about it. Also, talk to that person first. If you feel that they are in a bad enough place where they need to be binded, don't mention your magic unless they're like cool with it. But I find a lot of the time it's a lot more efficient to talk to people and work it out, even though it might be messy and it might be sticky and you don't really want to deal with it. It's a lot better. It's going to have a better effect, because let me tell you something else. People aren't stupid, okay? I mean, kind of, but still. If they have a strong enough will to do the actions that they're doing that you're trying to bind, they're still going to happen. Like, if that's what they truly want to do, and that's what, like, their will is leading them to do, your binding spell may not be powerful enough to stop that. But your words can be. If you are binding someone from substance abuse, talk to them. Get them help. That's, you know, the heavier side. But you know what I mean. So to recap, Wiccan Rede, we try not to harm others. We try to let them have their free will. Binding, not necessarily a bad thing. You can use it on yourself to help out with those annoying little habits. Parents can use it on kids, but generally only advise if it benefits the child. Binding on others with their permission is best. Without their permission, think about it and ask your goddess. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.